Representative McCormick has agreed to stay with us for a few minutes for some questions. As you all already know by now, if you have a question, put it on a card, raise your hand. Staff will come pick that up, and we'll go from there. I've actually already been given a couple of you. You stimulated some conversation already with some of your comments. You spoke a little bit about prior authorization, and it is one of the things that we know wastes physicians' time. You talk about waste our resources, waste our time. We had a bill in the House and on the Senate side with bipartisan, bicameral support in December. That hasn't been reintroduced yet. What do you think is the prognosis of getting a prior authorization bill in terms of Medicare Advantage plans in the 119th?
Well, I think we have a good chance, and I think one of the things we need to realize is that AI, once again, can be used to streamline this process. Everybody wants this, obviously, except for the insurance companies. But they're the biggest lobbying group in America. They really are. And so this has been held up time and time again. Nobody thinks it's a bad idea. Everybody understands why it's important. But even in the last CR, we had a CR that everybody said, no, this is a horrible CR. Then we stripped PBM reform out of it, stripped the physician fix, and then we called it a good bill, and everybody voted for it. It made no sense. We need to have more sensible conversations about this stuff. I don't think that's going to be an issue, though. I think that's going to get passed. It's way overdue, along with a lot of other things that we know need to be coming down the pipe. We need to also be very thoughtful when we talk about PBM review revisions. I think we need to make sure that it doesn't just benefit pharmaceuticals or somebody else unintendedly. The unintended consequences of Congress are obvious to a lot of us, where they have well-meaning laws that punish us. And this is where regulatory burden also comes in, where you can have, and instead of making a physician application, which you all know too well, when you have a 1.5 mile road in my district that needs to be repaved, and they spend $750,000 to review it for 18 months just to do what they know they're going to do anyways. That's the stupidity of government and regulation.
So let's stay on another topic that was in that continuing resolution back in December. They got temporary approval, and that's telehealth.
Yeah.
I suspect, Georgia, I'm from Kentucky. Georgia's got definitely rural areas, so you understand the importance of telehealth. What is the prognosis and the flexibility and the funding for telehealth being extended beyond March 14th deadline, and even more importantly, the possibility of it being made permanent so that practices can actually invest and plan with confidence that it's not going to have the rug pulled out of it March 14th or December 31st.
Sure, I think it's the way of the future. First of all, most people see the benefits. There's not really any downside to it. If it delivers a vehicle that's economic and makes sense and convenient, it actually gets people to be proactive with their health, because otherwise they would avoid that otherwise having that examination, if you will. I know you can't lay hands on the patient. I know it's not billed the same way. But I think COVID has kind of changed the way we look at medicine and everything else as far as present ourselves to people. I think it has a very good chance of being permanent. And of course, I always want to caution people, though, if you're trying to design your business around government subsidies, it's probably a bad business. I'm just going to tell you, because then you're always wondering and begging for the government to solve your problems. It's a horrible place to be in, because when the government controls you, they control you. It doesn't matter if it's your education, your business, your practice, whatever it is. As much as possible, we need to get out of your way and allow you to deliver healthcare the way you guys want to, including with telehealth.
So I just got handed a question, a little bit different topic, would be, I think you'll have an opinion. It says our country is facing a critical physician shortage. What is the prognosis of additional GME funding, particularly in a tight budget situation?
Yeah, so there are a ton of people out there that would love to invest in bigger schools. The reason, just like with nursing, we even have a greater nursing shortage than doctor shortage. I've been trying to research that, find out why it is. Apparently they didn't have enough instructors. We've expanded nursing schools in Georgia dramatically. I know that Morehouse, while I was there, nearly doubled in size. We have residencies that are exploding. Some of those are maybe not in good ways. We have foreign medical students we've brought in, and people who study outside the United States. There's lots of ways to solve this. I think whether it be through, it's amazing to me, first of all, can anybody agree that it's amazing to me how many applications we still have to medical school despite the fact that we're getting our pay cut, and that you probably had a 20% decrease in disposable income in the last 20 years. But people still want to be physicians. Why? Because it's a noble profession. It's almost like a calling. It's just a very expensive calling. But I think the fact that so many people still want to be physicians means that there's a great window to expand medical schools, not just through government programs, but through philanthropic efforts, through a business model, where actually school doesn't have to be more expensive all the time. I hate that Newsweek kind of ruined the education system, where we're graded off of bells and whistles rather than educational results. Anybody who studies education like I've studied, and I've taught both private and public education systems, knows that we've expanded schools' ability to put out PowerPoints. But as one of my professors at Morehouse said, I said, "You're an amazing professor," and everybody loved his class. And I said, "But I noticed you go really slow through the PowerPoints, and you give us the PowerPoints, so I'm not even taking notes." And he says, "What I realized that no matter how fast I go a slide, I can give you 80 slides. Really dense information, but you can't learn faster than you did 20 years ago. The human brain hasn't developed like AI. We can only learn at a certain level based on who you are. And in the same way, the way we develop schools isn't about the bells and whistles. We still learn at the same rate, guys, the same output. Maybe you have different technologies, you have different knowledge bases because we've learned, but let's think about the outcome. We need to make medicine more affordable, including medical school, by the way. And that's one way we're going to win on this."
Yeah, we're talking $200,000, $300,000 debt for a lot of students graduating from medical school now, and it's unsustainable. It's like a second house mortgage or something. So you're right about that. So you're a member of the Doc Caucus, and one of the things that someone has asked about here, which is a good idea, how do we get more doctors into the House, into the Senate, and what are the things that you would recommend for those people who are considering entering the political arena?
Politics is so unique, and you have to be called to it. I've known plenty of doctors run, several that were really good candidates, in my opinion. Dr. Reddy just ran in Kansas, lost in a close race, but you have to pick your race, first of all, a winnable race. And then you have to go out there and work your butt off like it's medical school, like it's residency, because it is a full-time job to campaign. I was working night shifts in the ER. I was probably sleeping on average during the week about 2 hours a night. Actually 2 hours a day because I was working night shifts in the ER. And I lived off of caffeine and prayer. And you better study this stuff, because politics is not medicine. It is a different animal. And the relationships you have, I encourage you to study what we did, which is you got to go to all organizations, but not repeat yourself in certain organizations. Make sure you're going out there. You have to raise a ton of money, which is the worst part of this. You have to connect with the people. You have to be able to convince them that you care. This is real deal politics at its best. And if you want to get involved, if you want to get other positions involved, you have to pick your candidates wisely and fund them wisely. There's only so much money to go around. You can't just hire a position per district and go out there and try to win you wouldn't have enough money. But if you focus your efforts, and this is what I'm talking about, waste, fraud, abuse, right? If you focus your efforts on the things that matter, the winnable seats, we can get more positions into politics, and I think this will be a better place. Look, we have about 14 positions, and that includes both parties, and we have about 177 lawyers. You do the math on that. There's a reason we have problems in D.C.
So you invited difficult questions. I think this is an interesting one. It's about Medicare Advantage plans, which, as you said, the insurance companies are making record profits, and many of that is off of Medicare Advantage plans. And yet this year, while physicians get a cut, Congress has decided to give Medicare Advantage plans a bump.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that, and why is that, and what can we do about some of the concerns with Medicare Advantage plans and the impact upon our patients?
Yeah. So my legislative director, which is Nathan Barker back there, raise your hand, Nathan, with a beard. When we get done, I want everybody to go over and punch him until he gets a good solution to this Medicare problem. It's so complex because everybody thinks they have an idea. The problem is, imagine a bunch of congressmen, most of them older, who have a hard time turning on their cell phones, and then investing in a $2.5 trillion economy by itself, the biggest spending item in Congress. It makes up about over 30% of our non-discretionary spending, about 26, 27% of the budget. is all medicine, and it's so complicated. You guys understand better than anybody. You got Medicaid, Medicare, you have insurance companies which all bicker, hospital systems which are bickering with the insurance companies, lack of reimbursements, you have PBMs involved, you have pharmaceuticals involved, you have mid-levels fighting with doctors, and you have nurses that there's a shortage with, who are paying them extra money to go from place to place, which they don't do as good job as the nurses who are staying there, who are mad because they're getting paid less. You get the idea. And this doesn't even count the overnight techs that wonder why they don't get to not pay taxes when some person who's serving them food does. See what I'm saying? This is a complex system, and you're trying to explain it to people who are sometimes up near 80 years old who don't even understand how to balance their checkbook. And this is why it's so hard to solve these problems. I would love to say there's an easy solution, there's not. But some of it's just the hard work we do in Congress and putting your foot down and say, I'm not going to vote for this unless you make this better. And that's kind of what I've really gotten. When you have a 2 or 3 vote majority, it gives you some leverage. And that's what we're fighting for right now.
So another, I think, a little bit difficult question that we may need to go punch in the back on this one as well. Medicaid cuts.
Yeah.
We are very concerned about Medicaid cuts because we believe that those patients who are on Medicaid benefit from a health perspective and from a long-term perspective with Medicaid. But yet we understand that there is pressure and move to potentially make deep cuts in Medicaid.
Yeah, so one of the things we can really save a lot of money with in Medicaid, and I'm not making this up, you can do the research yourself. By the way, fact check anything I say. Sometimes I make up stuff, but most of the time it's fairly accurate. I feel like a resident director, right? You just tell your students stuff sometimes, and it's like, most of the time it's true, but you better Google it and make sure it's really accurate, or Medscape it, do something. But there are hundreds of billions of dollars of waste in Medicaid. In fraudulent claims where you don't have to have verification of income when you apply for it. The headhunters or the people who distribute it basically get a cut, and then the insurance company gets paid, and you don't really have good insurance because you don't qualify for it. That's fraud. Hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud. There's a great place right there to make cuts where you're not doing anything that's going to decrease the deliverables for a patient nor your payment. Just by getting rid of the inefficiencies of the fraudulent payment system in Medicaid. I think it needs to be given back in grant blocks based on per capita per state, and given back to the state rather than, and the more you keep the federal government at, the less wasteful it is. What we do, we take the money, we employ a bunch of bureaucrats, and then give it back to you and say, make sure you do this with it. Does that sound efficient? Because that's, by the way, what our Department of Education does too. When you employ a bunch of bureaucrats to tell you as a state what to do with your people in your state with unique challenges, it's not efficient. This is why I'm a federalist. I believe in state rights. I don't believe what California does is the same thing what New York does, which is the same thing as Texas or Florida or Georgia or Tennessee. We all have different challenges. We have different rural communities. We have different things. This is why when COVID happened, one size does not fit all. Each governor has a much better idea what's good for their state than one federal government saying, one size fits all, that's what you're going to do. We give it back to the states. Let the states keep their money. Let them be more efficient. Let them figure it out. Then we compare and contrast different systems to figure out which one's best and copy what's best. We went from the worst squadron of the year to the best in 1 year because we had a bunch of us say, what are the other squadrons doing better than us? Copy it. There's no shame in that. That's actually efficient.
So another tough topic is PBMs. And legislation on PBMs.
Excuse me while I have a little convulsion here. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, we perceive them as basically a black hole that sucks money out of the system. I'm curious of your opinion, and more importantly, what can the legislator do to reduce some of the waste that's there in the PBMs and the whole problem with the rebates and everything?
So we had PBM reform in this last CR, and it got stripped out. Horrible idea. I voted against that CR. I was one of 34 people who voted against it. I'm on the warpath. These guys are vertically integrated in medicine. They make ridiculous profits with really very little benefit. You guys know how PBMs work as well as anybody, but America doesn't. But they're starting to understand this word, and they're understanding that it's a negative word, and that it's pilfering a lot of the money that should be going to where it's supposed to go, which is the patient-doctor relationship. We are on top of it. This is one of our main targets right now. They're fighting back like crazy. Remember, the profits they make they could pay everybody in DC, 535 legislators, including the Senate and the House, $1 million each, and they're just barely touching their profits, their margins. This is the problem with the lobbying efforts in DC. This is why I'm very much into, instead of the way we do our taxation system with special favor, a consumption tax, which nobody can get out of. The rich people pay more because they buy more. Nobody hides. Nobody gets away with, billion-dollar companies that pay zero tax. That goes away. That's real tax reform, by the way. But I know that's not going to happen anytime soon. But basically, know that we're all over the PBMs. That myself, Buddy Carter, and several others from the Doctors Caucus make that a point. But we need to make sure that it doesn't just benefit one community over another. That it's fair and actually makes sense for the patient.
So shifting back to our top priority right now, which is Medicare payment reform, give us your realistic prognosis and projection. Are we going to get the rollback? Are we going to get a bump? And are we going to ultimately get some kind of a formula that's linked to the actual practice expense?
I would love to say we are. Here's what I'm going to promise. There is no shortage of people fighting for site neutrality. I think we'll get that year by year, but it's going to be a yearly fight. I think we need to make it permanent. There's no reason that a not-for-profit hospital should not get punished, and we get punished when we have to pay taxes. The problem is their solution that I last heard was, oh, we'll just cut the hospitals too. Well, there you go, your rural hospitals. And anybody who doesn't have a good payer mix in their city. So we've already seen AMC, which is the biggest trauma one other than Grady in Atlanta, just closed recently because they didn't have a good payer mix. If we continue to see reimbursement cuts, we'll see closures and shortages of healthcare providers and hospital systems. So I think we have a general idea. It is not as easy as it seems, guys. This is why we need more help. We need more lobbying efforts. We need more physicians in Congress. And we need a lot more exposure on these issues because this is really a big fight.
Well, thank you. We're out of time, but I'm going to give you the last question, and you don't need to answer. But the question is, when are you running for president?
Hey, I tell you what, God does funny things. There's no way that this kid who was the son of a secretary and who didn't plan on going to college, only went to college because I saw a documentary back in '86 when I was graduating high school called Top Gun. I don't know if you saw that documentary. Changed my life, made me realize I have potential and that God blesses people despite themselves. But God's in control of everything. I'm not worried about that at all. That's for bigger minds and bigger people to decide. But God bless you. I appreciate you guys being with me today.
Thank you all, and thank you, Representative from Georgia 7th District.